Well, I'd like to welcome you to our session on classroom management,
where we're going to look at the basic elements and the components of effective classroom management plans. We're going to look at various procedures and routines that establish a productive learning environment. We're going to look at basic management orientations, theories from one end of the continuum to another, and center on Glasser's control theory and Cantor's assertive discipline. We're going to look at specific teacher actions that research has found that help maintain an effective classroom. We're going to look at asking you to develop a management plan for your classroom, as well as for an individual student that you're going to select that perhaps in the past has given you problems. So I'm going to give you a bunch of tools that hopefully you can use.
Let's look at the first end of the continuum and different theories of classroom management and look at assertive discipline. Here, the orientation is that we treat all kids the same. Let's see what it means.
How do we get kids to learn for us? What can we do to motivate them? So let's look at some possible answers. If you've taught for any great length of time, I'm sure you felt like this on certain days, especially as it came to trying to get kids to do what you wanted them to do. You're running as fast as you can, working as hard as you can. Well, some days just don't go as you plan. And, kids are always been mischievous. They've always misbehaved, even in Mr. Grimes' classroom. And it used to be that we'd sometimes have them write on the chalkboard, "I will not," 100 times, whatever action they did. And here might have been some of the things that our kids have done that we've got on them for. In fact, I've been guilty of most all of these. The fart noises, I think, are the funniest. I have a grandson that's proud of that, being able to have that skill. Kids like to be kids, but sometimes they do things that really at the wrong time that interfere with what we're trying to do. That's actually happened to me when I began my teaching from one of my students after calling roll. Anyway, we've seen kids do a number of different things. But so what do we do to create an orderly environment that's conducive to learning with kids being able to be kids? How do we balance that act? Everybody has an idea how to handle kids. We've had a lot of books written on classroom management, and we have a continuum of theories. Here's one from Comedy Central.
Hello, I'm Dr. Richard Shea, here to tell you about my exciting new drug-free treatment for children with attention deficit disorder. This treatment is fast and effective and doesn't use harmful drugs. Watch closely as I apply treatment to the first child. Sit down and study! Sit down and study! Stop crying and do your schoolwork! If you would like more information on my bold new treatments, please send away for this free brochure entitled, "You Can Either Calm Down or I Can Pop You in the Mouth Again." Thank you.
Well, I think we can find some better methods to motivate kids rather than popping them in the mouth. When you look at what you're going to do in establishing an effective management system, typically we look at 4 elements that will affect what you do and how you do it. One is your kids that you got sitting in front of you. The student characteristics. First grader is much different than a 12th grader. If we have an advanced class, they're a little bit different than a remedial class if you're grouping kids. You'll find that if you're a secondary teacher, first period's a little bit different than last period, even if you're teaching the same subject, because kids oftentimes will act differently by the time of day, and also at times in smaller schools, kids, all the band kids will be taking certain classes, all the chemistry kids will have a certain track, so they tend to group themselves in a secondary kind of way that lends to them having a different personality by class period. So the characteristics of the kids will affect what you do in establishing your plan. And secondly, what physical environment you have, how big your classroom is, the light that comes in, the sounds that are surrounding your classroom, the colors, the types of chairs, the environment, the type of flooring you have, what sort of print-rich walls that you endeavor to create. All of the physical environment factors, the artifacts, will impinge upon your management system. And then what your school expects, your school rules, how you're going to count a tardy, all the way down to taking lunch counts and the like. But those will affect what you establish. And then school procedures, what is the expectation for behaviors in the hallway and in class and the like. So all of these impinge upon you establishing a management system within your own environment. We find in constructing that system there are different theoretical orientations, and you will tend to gyrate towards one end of the spectrum or the other, moving from laissez-faire to rather authoritative. And we're not even in this session going to talk about the laissez-faire, what we would call the non-directive approach. And here, much of the time we're on a graduate system in college. It's where the student primarily is in charge. A lot of different choices. Sid Simon is rather the lead author on values clarification in this direction, laissez-faire system, where students are responsible for their own learning. And when we look at regular public school and private school classrooms, we're more ending the continuum in the collaborative mode, where you do have a teacher in charge, and that's balanced with students, and their structured choices. And famous here are the Harry Wongs, the Jim Fay, the Fred Jones, and sort of the founder of that collaborative method is William Glasser. So we're going to look at Glasser's control theory, which kind of led to the other three's orientation. And then at the end of the spectrum, the more directive approach is Lee Cantor, where the teacher's in charge. Student has rather few choices, and the discipline is rather assertive. So let's look at what each of these entail. If you want to kind of find out where you fit in that, what you could do is stop the tape here and answer these 12 questions from a Likert scale from 1 to 5, and then on your sheet of paper add questions 1, 3, 8, 9 together, 4, 5, 7, 11 together, and 2, 6, 10, and 12 together, and your higher score probably leading you towards one of those three types of structures. You're lean towards being assertive or collaborative or laissez-faire, non-directive. So you could do that. Typically when we talk about the laissez-faire or the non-directive, we're talking about those teachers that place very few demands or controls on students, that kids can do their own thing. Teachers will accept student impulses and actions and less likely to monitor behavior. Sometimes we'll see this in the Montessori orientation, but yet there is some structure to that. But typically on a secondary or elementary, if you're non-directive, usually some chaos is going to start until you establish rules. Not probably the best way to start a career. If you find yourself in the collaborative realm, this is where you give students choices, and the rules are developed collaborative. The teacher and you will stress that it's the kid's responsibility for their own behavior, and when they misbehave, it's usually because something's not happening right. There's not a need being met, and you're going to look at, as a teacher, the learning environment, so maybe you can modify it and provide some alternative ways or alternative choices for that kid to achieve. And if you're more in the directive teacher, you're with Cantor and Assertive Discipline, where you have the rules and limits and controls on students, and you want them to also behave independently, but when they break a rule, if they're disruptive, you're not hostile, you're just rather assertive, and you correct the behavior, you reprimand them with a negative consequence, and when they do what you want, it's a positive consequence. So very behavioralistic in orientation. So let's see where you fit as we talk about these two continuums. How do you best motivate kids? Let's look at how you're going to do it. Lee Cantor, on one end of the spectrum, is oriented towards assertive discipline. And he believes that teachers have the right to determine what's best for their kids, and that they believe that kids ought to live up to that compliance. That no kid has the right to interfere with other kids' learning. So assertive teachers quickly and assertively correct the behaviors that they need, and they tell the kids exactly what behaviors they expect with classroom rules that are firm and clear and concise, and they expect compliance to those rules. It's a simple system. Some of the key elements of Cantor's orientation is that, one, you dismiss any thought that there's any acceptable reason for misbehavior. That is, it doesn't matter if the child's dog died last night. If he doesn't comply by the rules, then he will expect the consequences. So it doesn't matter what's going on. It is, for every child, to be fair, you have to expect them to live up to the behaviors that you expect. Secondly, you decide what rules that you want to implement in the classroom. And here you put them in a positive phrase. You don't go over everything that they can't do, but you try to keep it in the positive. Like in an elementary set of rules, you might, if you want your kids to raise their hand to speak, a simple rule: be kind and respectful to others, keep our hands, feet, and objects to ourselves. We share. We walk in the classroom and halls. We keep our room neat and clean. We listen when others are speaking. We follow directions. All are teachable behaviors that are written in the positive. If you're in a more middle school or secondary assignment, you might look at, I will always do my best. I will positively participate in all classroom activities. I will stay on task. I will not use put downs. I'll respect other people's differences. I'll raise my hand to speak, and so forth. But again, most of them written with the positive orientation that you could go back and teach. If you're implementing cooperative learning, we'll find those classrooms also have a set of rules that deal with the cooperative learning environment. We must complete each group activity and individual report together. We play your role in the group. You have the right to ask anyone else in your group for help. You have the duty to assist everyone who asks for help, and so forth. So you keep the rules simple and you keep them positive in the Cantor system. And then third, you determine the negative consequences for the misbehavior. And here you provide a consequence every time a student misbehaves. You don't really overlook a misbehavior because then it snowballs, but you use a discipline hierarchy to correct each infraction of the rule. And the consequences usually have to be logical, with a direct relationship between the misbehavior and the consequence. It's not our proportion. One of the original ways that Cantor in his first book suggested, and really I don't see this as one of the best ways to do it in today's school system, but we would have in the elementary schools, especially if a kid, let's say the rule was you raise your hand or you don't talk while the teacher's talking, and the kid was talking. If the kid was talking while you taught, first step is you give him a warning, and you put the name of the kid on the board. Then if he does it again, you put a check mark beside it, which gives him 10 minutes after school. If he does it again, you put a second check mark, and he has 20 minutes, or there's appropriate behavior associated with that second check mark. And then third check mark, it's longer, and then if there's 5 in that one day, he's sent to the office, or whatever consequence you see as important. But it's a basis of putting the kids' names on the board and checking them off. So there's a consequence, but yet that has been abridged, and in his later books he talked about teachers coming up with their own hierarchy of consequences. So let's look at a possible hierarchy that you could use in whatever classroom you're in, from kindergarten to 12th grade. And we'll look at the first set, where instruction's maintained. That is, you really don't stop teaching. Kids haven't interrupted, that misbehavior hadn't interrupted what you're doing. The very easiest way to maintain discipline is you simply being there. A lot of initial classroom infractions, misbehaviors, are because you're out in the hallway and class hasn't begun yet, or you've had to leave the room, as you saw Mr. Grimes. But being present is an important part of a discipline hierarchy. But the second way, once you're there, and if a kid's talking while you're talking, the easiest way to correct that a lot of times is just you pause. I wouldn't wait any longer than 10 seconds, but typically you wait more than 5 seconds and all eyes are going to come to you, and usually tells the kid, hey, quit what you're doing. If silence doesn't work, you look at the kid, or you combine those two, where you make eye contact with the kid. Anytime you look at someone longer than 3 to 5 seconds, there's an intended message, and the eyes can be a very dominating type of instrument to use, because it can, one, weaken their self-assurance. It can, it controls the behavior, and some of you might need to practice that, almost staring at a student, but it's a highly important key, and according to Cantor, in controlling students. And all you got to do is look at them. Sometimes they're change behavior. If you wanted to combine all three of these in one gesture, as kids talking, you not only pause, but you look at them and you move towards the disturbance. Typically, in this case, you could continue to talk and just move towards the kid that's talking or passing a note or whatever the misbehavior is, and it's going to tell him, once you get close, that I'm going to stop what I'm doing. It could be then you touch the desk, and if it becomes, it's in Fred Jones' system, a way to tell the kid to get back on task, it becomes a universal emblem, almost a very defined system, telling the kid to correct his behavior. Another consequence follows. But typically I'd touch the desk rather than the student on the shoulder. But touching and getting close in proximity is a very controlling gesture. And then it could be, Kent, that you use the name just as you're teaching. It kind of directs the focus onto that child, and it shows you that shows the child that you've seen what he's doing, and typically kid changes the behavior. Or if maybe you've even used one or more of those, you might call the kid to answer a question, especially about something that you just talked about. And here you would use a student name first, and then the question, which is a signal to the rest of the class that the kid hadn't been listening. So all of these, you simply can control behaviors by continuing to teach. Doesn't take much time. Now, you're not going to use all of those one after another, but you choose which one of those, or combining those, might work on the first way to correct the behavior. And then if one of those doesn't work, or one or more of those doesn't work, then you give them a verbal desist. You request, Kent, what's the rule? You need to stop talking. And you just tell them assertively that change the behavior. Yeah, sometimes if it's a behavior that, like if he does it a second time, you say, Kent, next time you talk, I'm going to move you over here. And you're going to tell him what you're going to follow. What's the consequence? Or if you continue to talk, we're going to call your parents, or we're going to meet outside. Whatever you're going to do as the second level of consequence. I like to move kids a lot of times, but I like to ask them to change the behavior first. But you could, Kent, would you move over here? And just have them move to another seat. Works all the time. Or you could place them in a timeout if the infraction has been of a more serious nature. There should be a place in your room to put a kid that you can supervise. You never want to put them in a timeout location that you cannot directly see. For example, putting them out in the hallway can get you in legal trouble because you can't supervise them. And sometimes in elementary school we have kids flee, and if you punish a kid and you put him outside and he runs from school, and then you get a call from the principal that you've understood that Bobby's been hurt in a car accident right outside of school. Is he in your class? And you tell him, no, he's in the hallway, and you look and he's gone. It's not a good situation for you. So always put them in a place that you can see them. For secondary, I love the see me after class, because there you don't have to confront the child. Sometimes if he's done something that's kind of made you mad, gives you time to cool down, gives you time to think about what you're going to do with him. And when he doesn't have an audience, he will be much more mendable to what you're going to ask him to do, because his audience has been taken away. And one of the cardinal rules of any teacher is to never argue with a child in front of the class. Taking their time away, because the most valuable thing they have in a school day is their free time. And so asking, after you've tried one or two of the other techniques, to take some time away from them, oftentimes very much works for the elementary child. Denying a privilege or eligibility to attend on a field trip or whatever are good long-term ways to control behavior. But all of these are techniques that you could use that involves no outside involvement, but it does kind of disrupt your instruction. And then when one or two or three of those you've tried and nothing's worked, then you might use some outside involvement. And then in just a moment we're going to show you disciplinehelp.com for some ideas that might motivate your child to change the behavior that is more Glasser oriented, but it gives you a bunch of ideas by checking this website. You could now involve parents. If several times you've tried to change the behavior, it continues to go on, but parents are a great resource to call and to gain help in trying to change that behavior. And if you do call the parents, have them come to meet with you, with the child, and there develop an action plan so that he doesn't continue to talk while you're talking, or whatever the disruptive behavior is. We have in the secondary and middle schools in-school suspension, and there are possible infractions for that. A lot of times it'll be using cuss words or threats to kids, bullying instances, and so forth. But those automatically, you don't start on the lower end of the scale. by a pause or silence. At times if your fight disrupts, or you start cussing, or they start cussing, those are you automatically kick up to the outside involvement here. Out of school suspension, or for very defined things, those are for bringing weapons to class or the like, but those are decided by your administration, not really within your realm. And then finally, at times we can refer them to the juvenile authorities for certain illegal infractions, or even alternative placements in school. And the final, I guess, ultimate is incarceration. And I used to, as a joke, have here 23 beheading, but some of my foreign students then after class asked if we really behead kids, so I took that one off as a joke. But you get the drift. You can, in a hierarchy of discipline procedures, you pick and choose what would fit the situation, the severity of the misbehavior, and the like, and gives you a lot of flexibility to handle kids. There are some techniques that you don't want to do, and using homework as punishment. It works in the secondary level, especially giving all your kids extra problems to do, as Mr. Grimes was going to do. But yet, what do you teach kids when you do that? You might teach them that homework is punishment. In Russia, when we traveled to Russia with some of our PSU students, we found that it used to be popular in bygone days that they'd have some rocks in the corner, and kids would bend on their knee and face the corner on their knee and stay for an hour in the corner. Our American early school used to have kids sit on a chair with a dunce cap, but those are not considered very positive ways to discipline kids. We had a teacher not too many years ago bought a new refrigerator and took the box to her kindergarten class, and when one of the kindergartners misbehaved, she put him in timeout, and she put a little door in the refrigerator box, and he had to go and sit in that box. Well, parents came in to pick up their kid early one time, found them in the box, and were not very happy, and actually that teacher was not rehired the next year. So there are some ways. Anytime you hold a child up for humiliation, not a good way to discipline kids. Some other techniques that we suggest you avoid is making fun of kids and ridiculing them. Especially in the secondary behavior or school system, it might be popular because kids like to poke fun at others, but when you do it, it sort of makes it permissive, and then that ridiculing escalates, and it totally can get out of control. And then kids can also go home and say, this is what you said about them. And then when the principal asks you, well, did you say this to this kid, it really does make you look unprofessional. So I would watch poking fun at kids, because even though it's a joking situation, kids can turn it around and take it seriously. It does very little good typically to force a kid to publicly, in front of class, admit that he lied. Those should always be done out in the hallway or after class, in front of nobody. And I would in no way accuse a child of cheating or a major moral infraction in front of class. Those should all be done in private. Asking why a kid did what he did. Why in the world did you do that? Again, that does no good, because kids wouldn't have done it if he knew why a lot of times. And it's not so much why they did it, but you want to get it corrected, and not the first best question to ask when you want to correct that behavior. I'd stay away from comparing kids to their siblings or to other kids. Golly, Kent, your brother was you're nothing like your brother. Why can't you act like your brother? Siblings will tell you that's one of the biggest irks that they have when they're compared behavior. Why don't you act like this? Any time that you start yelling at a kid, when you lose control, the kid wins, and the class kind of takes the kid's side a lot of times simply because they got under your skin. And once a kid sees he can get under your skin, he will continue to do that. So in all cases, remain calm. Don't raise your voice. Don't let them see you sweat. And get that very politely corrected. When you engage in a verbal battle with kids in front of a class, especially, nobody wins. Arguments, when you get to that point, you're not going to convince the other person to go your way. And when you start name calling, especially, the battle's lost. It's time to quit until cooler heads prevail. So verbal battles do no good. Making any unrealistic threats, saying things like, I'm going to knock your head off, or if you don't get quiet, I'm going to call your parents. And if you don't really mean to call the parents, because if you want to say what you mean what you say, you've got to follow up. The next time he talks, you call the parents. And then the last, as we've already mentioned, I would never put a kid for discipline reasons in the hallway because you just don't know if he's going to walk away. And we've known too many occasions where that's occurred and something else has followed and the teacher was held responsible because she did not or he did not provide direct supervision for that child. So some techniques to avoid. Not only in Encounter do you provide negative consequences, you also want to provide positive consequences for appropriate behavior. Just as any infractions you punish, any good behavior you want to reward. It's almost like Skinner's rats. Behavioralistic theory would tell you to punish the bad and reward the good. So again, you do that. You attract more bees with honey. And so you give verbal praise when they do what you ask. You have a number of systems in the elementary school that are really positive ways to motivate kids. You could have kids pick from a prize box or a sucker tree. You could give them roles that kids cherish. Believe it or not, second, third graders, being a custodian, librarian, or a teacher for the day, or whatever, it works. Not so much on a secondary level. Giving them some free time in another class period that you're going to have them with works. One of the best ways is a positive note home. We're going to talk about that in a minute and show you how postcards going home, a positive way to get kids and parents on your side. A neat system of rewards are using tickets for an auction or whatever at a specific time later on down the term that you're going to, well, let's say in an auction off certain things that the teacher collects over time. It could be neat little gadgets, could be just almost anything that would the age of the child would want. And a lot of times parents will give you those, businesses will give you those things, but kids will collect those tickets, keep it in their jars throughout the semester, and then at the end when the auction occurs, they count them up and use them to buy stuff. Giving out free things like pencils, pens, erasers, candy. All of those things, when they do well, are positive motivators. It seems so simple, but yet it works. With most teachers having a phone now on their desk for security reasons, they can also be used to phone parents for positive things that just happened in the classroom, to make a call home, or even to have the kid call home and tell them what they just did. Emails now are a great way to also communicate with parents at homes or at work. But send those things home. Really, when that child comes home and that parent says, boy, I got an email from your teacher that said this and this and this, I'll guarantee you the kid will come the next day prepared to do even more for you. Homework passes, leader for the day, anything that's positive that a kid will see will attract them. You know, there's no good that comes from constant punishment and harassment. Extrinsic rewards work, and usually negative comments don't. But look for things, and your text has a good 100 of them that might be possible extrinsic types of rewards that you could give your kids for positive behavior. And again, it fits your teaching situation, what's happening at your school, and but you could do it from simple recognitions, from stickers to asking the kid to tutor another child, from displaying their work. They could be where you suspend rules, where they get to bring candy to class, or they get to wear certain hats that day, or they could be special projects or fun activities where you might just take a minute and show a quick video, or you go outside for a little while. It could be special day events or special contests or whole class activities, but pick things that work and vary them throughout the school year. The fifth thing that Cancer encourages is that you conduct a meeting the first 10 days of school for your students to teach the rules and behaviors you want. You're going to post those rules and send them home to the parents, and or most schools will have you sign the rules and procedures and send them back for the school policies. You could also do that for your own policies and procedures. You could post them on your own website. A lot of, in fact, one of the projects you could do if you don't already have one is develop your own class personal website that will list all of your rules and policies and procedures. But ways of communicating to parents and to kids are key to that, so that kids can play the game. And then as you implement and reinforce those procedures and rules, it's quick and done every time it happens. They're appropriate application of consequences, both positive and negative. And it boils down to the maxim that I tried I learned early in my career, and I applied to my own children, and classrooms is say what you mean and mean what you say. For example, when Scott was little, and my youngest child, he was watching TV, and I went in and said, "Scott, it's time to take a shower. Get up, let's go. We got to go pretty soon." So he said, "Okay." And so I walk away expecting he's going to turn off the TV, and I come back 5 minutes later, and what's Scott doing? He's watching that TV. So I say, "Scott, now doggone," I said, "what did I just say? I told you to get your shower. We got to get going." "Okay, Dad, chill." So I think, well, this time, yeah. So I walk away. Well, I come back 5 minutes later, what's Scott doing? Still watching TV. And then I walk closer to him. I said, "Scott, doggone, I mean business now. Now turn that TV off." And finally, he does. And when I thought about it, he realized that by the third time I said it, at a certain level of tonality and a certain proximity, he knew I meant business, and next time something's going to happen. Well, why wait 3 times when you train kids? If you tell your class, "Let's get quiet," you don't have to tell them that 5 times or 3 times. You don't have to beg with them. You say it once and train them so that the next time there's going to be a consequence. Or the second time if you want to do it only twice. But you say what you mean, and you mean what you say. And if you do that in the first 10 days, and it becomes hey, teacher means business, things work a heck of a lot better. I love Cancer's broken record technique. Boy, it works. That is, when you want a kid to do something. For example, "Kent, I want you to move over here." Hey, but if I wasn't talking, Sally was talking to me, and Kent, I want you to move over here. But hey, look, now Bobby was talking. You didn't say anything, but Kent, I want you to move over here. But look, now I've been talking. I'm not gonna, Kent, I want to see you out in the hallway. I'm not, but I was not the one talking. And Kent, I want to see you out in the hallway right now. But it wasn't me. Hey, Kent, want to see you out in the hallway right now, or you'll be going to the office. But it wasn't me. Kent, go down to the office. You know, I kick it up each time. And I'm not going to say it more than 3 times. And I'll kick it up to a consequence. If I want to say what I mean what I say. But I'm not going to be drugged into their argument. I'm going to play the broken record. I'm going to tell him what I want done. And if he doesn't do it, we kick it up a notch. A key to say what you mean what you say. 6, he talks about positive repetitions, to implement things by using the positive in things. You kind of repeat the rules, but you do it in a way that you want them to show you. For example, show me how good little 2nd graders line up to go to lunch. Or the next 5 minutes, show me how a great class would get their work done without much talking. You state it in the positive and let them show you. And then to maintain it, to reinforce it, you use proximity praise. Boy, I like the way this group over here has been working quietly. Boy, I like the way Bob and John, Jane, and Sam, you all lined up. You're real quiet. That is great. Good job, you 4. So instead of focusing on the negative, the kids that are talking, you praise the youngsters that are doing the right thing. Works. Yeah, but my challenge to you, what are your rules? What are your reinforcement hierarchy? What do you plan to do to control your class?
Well, I hope you enjoyed looking at assertive discipline, where orientation is that we treat all kids the same. Now we're going to look at, in the second video, how we treat all kids differently.